In May 2015, Venezuela issued Decree 1787, dividing its territorial waters into operational zone of maritime defense. Two of these zones include disputed territories. The Atlantic zone spans from the Paria promontory towards Trinidad and Tobago and further south. It henceforth encompasses a large portion of Guyana's exclusive economic zone, which spans from Venezuela's borders towards the mouth of the Essequibo River, which Venezuela has been claiming since the 19th century. The western zone, in turn, encompasses a large portion of the Gulf of Venezuela, including the disputed waters around the Los Monjes archipelago and around the Guajira Peninsula. The decision to reassert the territorial claim is probably connected to the approaching parliamentary elections. Maduro probably wanted to stir nationalism in order to increase optimism, which has recently plummeted due to a slump in oil prices. The other factor were exploration activities conducted by ExxonMobil, which resulted in a significant oil find off the coast of Guyana. The find took place at the Stabroek block, which has been at the heart of the territory that Venezuela has been reclaiming since the end of the 19th century. The initial reaction of both Guyana and Colombia was one of dismay. However, both countries declared that it is in their utmost interest to solve the differences through peaceful means. There were reports that two Colombian frigates, Padilla and Independiente, were deployed to the Gulf of Venezuela. Similar situation happened in 1987, when a corvette was deployed into disputed waters which were previously patrolled by Venezuelan vessels. As a result, both countries declared military alerts, which nearly resulted in armed clashes. The Colombian government refuted the claims and instead declared that the frigates were sent into the Gulf of Morrosquillo in order to perform regular patrol activities, including the control of illegal fishing. However, Colombia does not have any naval bases in the vicinity of the disputed area, whereas Venezuela has two Coast Guard stations in the Gulf of Venezuela, which could be used by the Navy for potential patrolling of the disputed areas. In addition, the two frigates represent half of Colombia's principal surface combatant fleet. It is therefore not very probable that these frigates would be used in order to prevent illegal fishing. Such tasks would be normally carried out by coastal patrol vessels. The possible explanation is that the Colombian Navy is trying to offset the disadvantage it has with regard to the large distance between its naval bases and the Gulf of Venezuela. However, this does not imply that Colombia has any intentions to escalate the dispute, as everything depends on the practical implications of the demarcation of the operational zones and on Venezuela's reaction to Colombia's official protest. The Venezuelan Navy is the key force in terms of potential escalation of the dispute. In terms of the Western Zone, the government has been rather mute, and no aggressive rhetoric revolving around the use of force has been issued. The probable reason is that Maduro himself is not really sure about the implications of the demarcation of operational zones, and he is still considering how far he is willing to go. This is especially the case with relation to Colombia, given that its naval capabilities are far superior to those of Venezuela, despite the lack of bases in the near vicinity. However, in the case of Guyana, Venezuelan officials declared that the Navy could be ordered to remove the Deepwater Champion by force in case the decree is not being followed. The hawkish rhetoric is understandable given that Guyana's naval capabilities are far inferior. There is a number of Coast Guard bases in the vicinity of the area. However, the small number of coastal patrol vessels that Guyana operates does not compare to the military capabilities of the Venezuelan Navy. The response of Colombia and Guyana is entirely dependent upon Venezuela's eagerness to pursue its claims. In the case of the Atlantic zone, the developments are going to be derived from Venezuela's reaction to the exploratory activities by ExxonMobil. Venezuela declared that it is willing to negotiate with the Guyanese government. Nevertheless, Guyanese authorities declared that they would be ready to use armed force in case of a potential Venezuelan invasion. The Guyanese government is aware of the disparity between the military capabilities of Venezuela and Guyana, which is why it asked the United Nations to provide assistance with a peaceful resolution to the dispute. In the meantime, the Commonwealth also offered its helpful hand to Guyana. The same applies to the Western Zone. The probable forward deployment of Colombian frigates should be considered as a contingency measure which would be used only in case of Venezuelan escalation. The current main objectives of the Colombian government is to focus on the peace negotiations with FARC. Hence, no escalation or aggressive action by the Colombian government could be expected in the near future.